Much is said about the splendor of castles and the authority of kings, yet it was within the walls of the medieval inn that daily existence truly unfolded. These bustling gathering spots, alive with chatter and rumor, bore witness to countless tales that history never bothered to record. If you're curious about what it truly felt like to stay in a medieval inn, step with me beyond its well-trodden threshold, and let's step inside together. Consider how we grumble today when our meal takes too long in a restaurant. By comparison, any modern delay is a luxury. Dining out in the Middle Ages involved no curated menu, no polite accommodation for taste or allergies. Nights at the inn meant filling your belly with whatever hunt or harvest the innkeeper had managed to secure. The essential fare was always stew, a bubbling cauldron of uncertainty, changing daily with the catch or the leftovers. Occasionally, a fortunate guest might chance upon rabbit in their bowl. More often, squirrel or less illustrious quarry filled the pot. In those days, the mystery of the stew's contents was not a game, but a given. Some even joked that the surest way to lose your hunger was to inquire about the meat inside. This unidentifiable broth would be ladled into sturdy wooden bowls, accompanied by a wedge of bread known as a trencher, dense, sturdy, scarcely resembling our modern loaves. These edible plates absorbed the stew's flavors until they softened enough to eat, satisfying only the most persistent hunger. Unfinished trenchers often found their way to the poor or to the animals out back, for nothing at a medieval inn was tossed away without second thought. There was, however, one thing guests could count on: the presence of ale. In fact, it was required by law in many places that every inn offer bread and ale round the clock, a necessity not just for comfort, but as a public obligation. The ale was hearty and thick. In some taverns, it was said you could leave your spoon upright in a mug, and it would not tip over if you dared to retrieve it. Innkeepers were resourceful beyond measure. Scraps from the morning's porridge might be tossed into the night's stew, and nothing was wasted. Some cauldrons never saw the bottom, accumulating history and flavor alike, with every new addition layered atop the last. Legends claimed certain renowned stews simmered, uninterrupted, for generations. Affluent travelers might receive special treatment: a morsel of cheese with only a slight tinge of green, or a recognizable cut of meat, could be obtained for a price. At inns near the riverside, fresh fish was a prized rarity, though fresh carried a generous definition. Tools for eating were simple. Knives and spoons sufficed, as forks were a curiosity, and most dined directly with their hands. Courteous dining etiquette was limited to keeping your blade away from your neighbor's elbows as you fought for a crust of bread. Meals arrived at set hours, and the company was as mixed as the contents of the stew pot. Travelers, peasants, merchants, and wanderers jostled side by side on creaking benches, elbow to elbow, rumors and business passing from one end of the table to the other. When daylight waned and the meal ended, those same benches often became makeshift beds. If you found the idea of eating beside strangers uncomfortable, the notion of sleeping next to them would give you pause. Belly full of mysterious stew, the weary traveler needed somewhere to sleep, and the medieval inn had few luxuries to offer. Forget the locked doors, fresh linens, or privacy. Instead, one found the rudiments of what today we'd call social networks. Private sleeping quarters were rare, if not unheard of, for all but the wealthiest. Most instead spent their nights sprawled on straw-filled mattresses scattered within the same hall where supper had been served. The tables nudged aside. The community squeezed knee to knee, body to body. The only rule was containment. Fit as many guests into a room as possible, with beds intended for multiple occupants, though intended simply meant the innkeeper decided how many a straw mattress could withstand. The slogan might as well have been, "There's always space for another coin." The bedding itself was spare. A wooden frame, ropes strung tight, and the ubiquitous mattress of straw, hay, or wool if you were fortunate. If there were sheets, you could rest assured they had adorned many others before you. Pillows? Merely sacks, filled with whatever material was at hand. As for pests, bedbugs, lice, and fleas, they were so ordinary that their presence was pointless to complain about. In fact, records tell of municipal laws requiring innkeepers to launder bedding at least once each season, a testament to the low expectations of the time. Yet nothing was as unsettling as the complete absence of seclusion. You might share a bed with an unknown merchant or a drunken local who never made it home. Falling asleep to the chorus of unfamiliar snores, you'd remember your bunkmate's breathing better than their name. Only those of considerable means could rent a chamber to themselves, the privilege expensive and fleeting. And even then, thin walls offered only the illusion of solitude. Mice and insects claimed your space long before you did, undisturbed by notions of hospitality. Stranger customs abounded. Body servants often slept at the foot of their master's bed, and guards sometimes sprawled across doorways for protection and lack of alternative. Sensible travelers carried their own bedding, creating a protective barrier between themselves and the inn's questionable linen or resident wildlife. These discomforts, though off-putting to us now, served their own purpose. Conversations and alliances were forged in these crowded sleeping quarters. News and rumor spread. Trust and companionship built despite, or perhaps because of, the closeness. With the tables cleared and beds unrolled, the night might appear to settle, but true quiet was elusive. Darkness and candlelight would often usher in a different sort of revelry. For with sunset came the real festivities of the tavern, laughter echoing shoulder to shoulder in the flickering glow as the ale flowed and spirits rose. Medieval ale, nothing like the brisk, bubbly lagers of today, was thick, cloudy, and often served warm, like bread in a mug, with an intoxicating kick. Many drank a gallon a day, less for pleasure, more because water itself was often risky, while ale offered safety through its very fermentation. Games of chance, dice most of all, captured the imagination here. Simple to pick up, easy to cheat. Friendly wagers could sour to heated disputes in moments. Laws commonly forbade weapons within the tavern, and for good cause. Group singing was likewise popular, each voice joining a growing litany of tales. Some remembered, some invented, while the inn's resident cat might have kept the best tune of the night by the end. Some inns attracted minstrels and jesters, trading song and story for a meal or a warm spot on the floor, and with them, foreign tales traveled along the roads. Brawls, inevitable as nightfall, often served as the night's unofficial punctuation. An innkeeper's stout stick restored order as best it could. Yet perhaps the most prized entertainment was mere conversation. In an age before newspapers, inns carried the news of the world. A single evening within could keep a traveler apprised of everything from distant wars to local scandals. At curfew's bell, guests would trudge to their communal beds. The wiliest rushed to claim the best sleeping spots, while latecomers made do with whatever remained. There were rules extolled, though keeping order at midnight was as easy as driving geese into a storm. While modern hotels display crisp lists of do's and don'ts, medieval inns relied on the might of the innkeeper's staff, or the strength of community expectations. The first and greatest commandment: settle your debts, or you might forfeit your horse, cloak, or weapon. Unable to pay, the penniless might spend the night mucking stables as compensation for their board. The second, no swordplay beneath this roof, so common a problem that heavy fines were a necessity. Knives, of course, were permitted, as everyone relied on them to eat and, not infrequently, to defend themselves. Quiet after curfew was the next command, as town bells marked the hour when doors should bolt and voices hush, though in practice, large roadside inns paid little heed, especially with influential guests at the table. Theft was another perennial concern. Some hosts offered locked chests for a fee, but most advised guests to stash their valuables close, or expect little sympathy should they be lost. Disease brought on fresh rules. During times of plague, any traveler showing a cough or rash might be barred and left to sleep under an open sky. The enforcement of these edicts varied from place to place, sometimes dictated by the weight of a guest's purse or standing. The rich could flout the codes and receive a blind eye. The poor might earn expulsion for a minor slip. Equity, it seemed, entered only in the form of ale measures, for innkeepers too faced heavy penalties for deceit. Watering down their wares or skirting local regulations could cost weeks' profits, if not their business altogether. Many inns required guests to contribute to routines, lighting the fire, praying at dawn, or assisting in small chores. Safety, despite these rules, was never guaranteed. Larceny, ill intent, and even violence were close at hand. Some keepers openly colluded with the thieves, exchanging information for a share in ill-gotten spoils. Guest lists, sleeping habits, and the location of heavy purses were facts worth money. Cunning criminals would eavesdrop at dinner or carve holes to peek into neighboring rooms, waiting until ale brought deep slumber and opportunity together. Cautious travelers would sew coins into their seams, hide valuables in money belts, or keep overnight vigils in trusted groups. Misfortune arrived in many forms. Fire was a constant peril, deadly in timbered buildings crowded with guests, candles, and cooking fires. A single spark could raise a whole street. Foodborne illness was common, for food safety was seldom more than hopeful guesswork. Hospital records spoke often of the suffering endured by those unlucky enough to dine at a poorly run inn. And the greatest threat of all was that of the stranger. Travelers were outsiders, with few allies and little power to seek justice if they were cheated or robbed. Sometimes they were shunned altogether, forced to sleep by the road when suspicion of illness or poverty lingered. Yet, in spite of every risk, dubious meals, stolen purses, cramped beds, and uncertain company, medieval men and women persevered in their journeys. For what the inn offered mattered more than discomfort. In this crossroads of life, travelers traded not only goods, but ideas. Information traversed the kingdom by word of mouth in these smoky halls, where news of distant markets, innovations, and weather patterns moved with the guests. Inns served as primitive social networks, a medieval version of the grapevine, where sharp wits counted for more than sharp tongues, but a punch could settle many a dispute. Over time, inns crystallized essential trade routes. They became natural stopping points for messengers and merchants, for letters and contracts. Records from the later centuries show innkeepers acting as unofficial postmasters, trusted to hold correspondence and pass it onwards. The very pattern of our highways and city names sometimes still trace the locations of these former inns, their memory imprinted upon the land. The practical need for secure storage turned many inns into makeshift vaults for precious cargo. Towns even offered tax breaks to encourage their proliferation along trade corridors, so vital were they to economic growth. Business was conducted at the long tables, contracts signed and disputes arbitrated with the local innkeeper often called upon to witness the agreement or the quarrel. Local rulers used inns to monitor newcomers, the first shadow of passports, as innkeepers kept official registers and sometimes reported their guests to authorities. Some towns even collected census data from night registers. To accommodate the crowds, sanitation had to improve, and so inns inadvertently helped towns develop superior waste systems and drainage, sometimes outpacing the comfort of private homes. Inns also fostered cultural exchange, songs and recipes crossing borders, customs blending as men and women from disparate regions met and mingled. Specialty inns evolved to cater to pilgrims, traders, or scholars, each adapting their services to their clientele. Some of today's most storied hotels can trace their ancestry back to such humble beginnings, though they have thankfully left behind much of the discomfort and most of the pests. The medieval inn was more than shelter. It was a living artery, connecting isolated lives to a broader world through trade, news, companionship, and sometimes danger. Within these rough walls, the story of our interconnected world began to take shape. Now, I would like to know, where in the world are you as you listen to this journey into the medieval past? And what hour of your day have you chosen to share this moment with us? Your presence and your story matter deeply to me in this growing community. Let us know below. If the tapestry of history woven here has moved you, I hope you'll join us on future journeys. Subscribe, leave your thoughts, and share this with a fellow traveler. Your voice adds to the ongoing legend we are all a part of. Thank you for stepping inside, if only for a while.